2021 was a real interesting year for me. I feel like I learned a ton and I did a lot of content creation, but overall, I don't feel like I really moved a ton. It just was mostly of internal movement, and that is kind of confusing and weird at times, but overall, I feel like I have made some good progress. I wanted to talk about 15 lessons that I got out of the year. And this is not the annual review episode, I'll be doing that in a couple episodes. But as always, we talk about building our best life and talking about how we can help ourselves and learning from the gems that life is trying to teach us. And then we also dig out of our lives and I really enjoy it. So if you're interested in that, then definitely follow the podcast because it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And let's just jump right into it. The first lesson is just that worrying really doesn't help anything. And this is something that I've heard multiple times, but it's kind of come to pass so clearly this year that there was plenty of times where I would worry and that worry would turn into, oh, I'll just get on YouTube for a little bit, and it just all of a sudden it's such a big problem. And it was something that really wasn't a big deal. It was like get a podcast episode out or finish up this homework assignment, and just writing it down would really diagnose or really identify what the beast was that I need to take down. And then all I need to do is take it down. I mean, you see this in RPG games, Bug Fables, Paper Mario. You have this ability to tattle or to figure out what your enemy has going for it. Its defense, its attack, its HP, some of its moves. But once you have that figured out, take the thing down. You don't have to worry about it. Like if you just hang around, it's going to take more hits at you. And you have to take more of an active role. And this is something that I really struggle with in 2021. I was like, I am going to just wait more on things to happen. And even though like that sounds ridiculous and that sounds completely ridiculous for me to do anyway, a lot of my actions were saying that. And not taking action was saying, okay, worries, I really just don't care. And of course, when you're not taking as much action, you're going to worry more. And as the time decreases to take action, your worry goes up, which means you need to take action all the more. Getting closer to graduation has been exciting, but it's also been worrisome. And I've let a lot of those worries kind of consume me a little bit. I think of it like getting out of one of those pits at one of those jumping places. You jump in, and it's really hard to get out of that pit. And you're like moving around and stuff, and it's not very comfortable, but you need to get out of there. I mean, you can stick around for a little bit. You need to get out though. And the thought of this is also is you're preparing for what you're going to harvest in the future. We'll get into that in a later lesson. Number 2, the power of visuals. I figured this out a lot more this year with setting up little poetry and different things on my door and other things just to really change my thought process. And thinking of my attention, my focus as like a laser, giving it really good things to bounce off of so it has a lot of energy instead of bouncing off of things that don't give it any value, like a blank wall or social media post or something like that that cannot inherently give me any value. But having those things that have helped me in the past clearly on my wall, it can be extremely empowering. See like a picture of family or a picture of something that's helped you in the past can really help you when you're having those really rough times. And I saw that multiple times. And this is something I really have been meaning to double down on. I bought some really cool posters, but you can see I'm not in my apartment. And so I don't have those posters up yet. But once I do, I'm sure that will help me a ton. And so I'm really excited because you think of like being inside your brain. What are some of the thought pictures that are there on the wall of your brain? What are the ones you see on a regular basis? Those are going to influence a lot of the things that you do, say, and think throughout the day. And so it's important to have those good things hung up. And this is something my dad has told me a lot is like hang up on the wall of your mind your accomplishments and things you've learned, and that will help you a lot. And there are some of those that are really transfixed and clear in my mind that I think about often, and it definitely does help a lot. But turning those into, physical visuals instead of just inside your mind visuals, extremely, extremely powerful. The third thing was the need for sleep. When you miss a day of sleep, it's like you're missing a plane. It really helps you to not reach your destination. You know how I said help? It prevents you from reaching your desired destination quicker. And if you like kind of, if your plane gets delayed for whatever reason, it is going to slow it down. You think of like when you miss a plane normally, it just kind of throws a wrench a little bit in your day. And if you think of like all nighters, I've pulled plenty of all nighters this past year, from getting interested in different businesses and just going down the rabbit hole to just watching YouTube or working on stuff that really wasn't that useful, but it felt useful at the time. A lot of all nighters really, I've had a couple all nighters that were pretty productive. Most of the ones I had in 2021, though, were not productive. And it's kind of clear when you think of it in this airport example or train example. If you're hanging around a train station or an airport, there really isn't a ton you can do. What is the chances that you're going to actually be productive? You're probably not going to be that productive. It's better to just get on the boat, get some sleep, and so you can be in your next destination and be where you need to be. And I think this is important. I think that this is something I struggled a lot with in 2021. Is part of me is like, okay, we can move on to the next day, we can move on to the next thing, and part of me is like, no, I just want to kind of be here and be stuck in my self-pity and think about this person that didn't show up for the podcast interview or this assignment I didn't do well on, and that keeps me stuck. Even if I'm moving forward, it keeps me stuck. So helping you sleep really helps a lot, and it's super clear if you do the research, and just even if you've lived for a long time or a short time, sleep makes a big difference. The fourth lesson is just that if you set goals without a really clear plan to achieve them, it's going to lead to lots of frustration. I set some pretty clear goals with the podcast this year, including being more, intentional with getting in touch with people that listen to it, having 20,000 downloads over the period of time, and just getting my personal brand more out there. And I think I did that to a certain degree, but without really clear quarterly goals, monthly goals, weekly goals, daily goals, hourly goals, it made it really hard, especially when I fell short of where I wanted to be that first couple months. And I kind of gave up a little bit on the goal. And so if you don't have those clear boundaries and those like markers in between parts of your goal, then it's going to be really hard to not hit them. Number 5, you must have something clear in place to replace in case if you take something important out of your life, like for me it was video games back in winter 2021, or when I took streaming out in late fall 2021, you have to have something very powerful and very exciting to put in place of that thing. When I took video games out, I was like, okay, I'm just going to automatically be more productive, but I didn't plan in all that time that all of the video games were potentially taking up. I didn't say, okay, I'm going to put that and put it here. I just kind of stressed myself out and just told myself I wasn't working hard enough. And yeah, that's where my self-care really went out the window, was that semester was not good. And so you just have to be really clear of what you are replacing something with. And you think of like basketball teams, they always have a clear person that they're going to put when somebody gets taken out. They're like, all right, we're going to put in this guy. Once they put in that guy, like he's ready to go and he's ready to play and contribute to the team while the other guy takes a rest. They don't leave leave that spot open and just leave it so it like nothing happens. They're using that spot of time. So we'll get into that later in the episode too. Number 6, if you're trying to get ahead, it's going to lead to you falling behind potentially. And so you have to be very clear of your pace and why you're increasing your pace. I think there was times where I just got too excited about different things, kind of going back to the all-nighters. And so I would just be like, all right, I'm just going to research this thing instead of sticking to what was important at the time. I mean, this led to me getting behind in schoolwork to a certain degree. I still did fine in all my classes. That's the crazy thing. But except accounting. We failed accounting. And we retook it, and it worked a lot better the second time. But if you're trying to get ahead in different things, just considering what you are potentially giving up, the chance to work on yourself in other ways, to get other things done, to hang out with family, which could recharge you more. Just being really careful of, okay, I'm okay with this opportunity cost. I mean, it can be really beneficial, of course, but you just have to be careful. One of my roommates, Moose, he's super good at getting ahead, and it never leads to him falling behind because he plans it out very strategically, so he stays on pace when he does get ahead like that. It doesn't lead to him crashing and burning later on. He plans ahead for that. Number 7 is the power of playlists. I think I knew this to a certain degree already, but this semester and this year I created a number of playlists for other things like podcast research, writing. Well, I already had a writing playlist, but I had ones for studying. And whenever I was needed to do that one thing, I just put on the playlist, and it honestly made such a big difference. And you think of it like going down a river, you have a certain vibe going down the river that puts you in the place to get that result that you want. And I went down this river in Idaho and Rexburg called Warm Slough a couple times, and it always just relaxed me so much. And so having those playlists is kind of like having a river to go down to get that thing done during the time the playlist is going. And I really try to keep my playlist sacred in the fact that I'm going to get this thing done that this playlist was designed for. I think one of the biggest holes I fell into was every times I'd really like a song and I'd just listen to it over and over, and there really wasn't any reason. I'd just listen to it when I was organizing my laptop or just doing whatever, and so it became that song that I just would listen to, but I didn't really have any clear power attached to it. I don't know. That was just interesting for me, but that's something I'm planning to do more is beef up those playlists and make them more specific for what they're designed for. Number 8 is that these days are no less valuable than any other days. This thought kind of came to mind to me a little bit ago. I realized, the days that I'm in right now are just as valuable as any other day in my life. When I was 8 years old, when I was 12 years old, like these days I'm in right now are just as valuable as those days. And I think you can make some arguments like, oh, your days when you're like 82 aren't worth as much. But it still is just really inspiring and interesting to me. Like, I could have made moves when I was 15 that would be helping me here I am right now. And it just has to do with what you're doing with that time and the thoughts and the actions that you're taking. And so it really doesn't matter what day it is. It's just as valuable. And there's just as much that you can get done potentially. And so it just really helps me to think like, yeah, even if I'm in a different environment or whatever, these days are just as valuable as all those days that were super good. And I need to treat them that way. Because if you treat the days as less valuable, as I did a lot in 2021, it's just not going to lead to a lot of good. And it's like this battle, like my thoughts are like, this day isn't going to be very valuable. And my actions are like trying to make it be like, oh yeah, it is going to be valuable. But then I take an action that is fighting more towards that negative thought. It doesn't end very well. You got to continue to reinforce yourself with that action and just remind yourself that this day is just as valuable as any other day. Number 9 is just that nothing is free. I can't tell you how many times people reached out to me that, it just seemed like a good idea. And then later on, I won't say I regretted it, but I was like, all right, now I'm thinking about this, and this was kind of a waste of time. I don't think this was the best use of my time, especially considering how big I want this podcast to get and how much I want it to help people. This person is kind of holding it back, and I've let them hold me back, and I've let them down. And so whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And even if somebody does give you something for free monetarily, you're still potentially giving time, thought, energy, space, all those things that are super priceless. But we need to be very careful of how we are treating those things. I am so guilty of this, but I'm still trying to get better at it. is just being very clear of, okay, this is that time and this is how valuable it is to me, and I'm not going to do anything that would make that time less valuable or that would throw a wrench in it. It seems useful to watch this YouTube video, but what I'm doing is I'm giving up time to do that. And so one thing that I really have wanted to do but haven't actually done is creating an hourly rate for myself. I think that's something I'll do in 2022, is being like, okay, this is my hourly rate and this is going to be my bar for the things I do. And if it doesn't reach that bar, then I'm not going to do it. And I think that will rule out a lot of things, but you just have to draw a line somewhere, and you have to be very clear of, okay, this is completely wasting my time compared to what I could be doing. And I think it's interesting because they say the best things in life are free, but I mean, you're still giving time, you're still giving energy. So I think in that respect, you're getting benefit and you're benefiting from it a lot. Like if it's walking, for example, but just considering that we are all like our own businesses, and just considering what we're investing time into, because we are always investing, whether it is a complete waste of time or not. So I think just considering that nothing is free is an interesting thought to think about. Number 10 is that you really don't need to know what's going to change the game for you in your life. I think back to my running and track days, and also just early beginnings with this podcast, I didn't know how much it was going to help me in my life, but I just kind of went for it. And the benefits and blessings came as I was consistent. But you don't need to know beforehand that this is going to change everything and that this is going to help you. Once you get started in that thing, you'll start to see the results. You'll start to have it be made manifest to you what that thing is worth it to you anyway. I tried different things this year, and I was sometimes like, yeah, I want this to bring this result. I want this to help me in this way. And you can't really know right off the bat how much something is going to help you. You can have an inkling, but you can never really know fully what that thing is going to do for you. And so a lot of times, and all the times, you just got to get something going so you can get an idea of what that thing will provide for you. And just knowing that you don't have to know if it's going to change everything. Just practicing, just putting in the work, just trying new things. All of that's going to lead to good, and you don't need to know which of those things is ultimately going to change everything. Just having that action habit and getting in that is one of the most valuable things. Number 11 is just that creation inspires clarity. There are so many times where I'd write poetry, or that I would write in my journal or make a podcast episode, and it would clear my mind up so much. For me, creating helps me to get to know my best self better, and also the people that I'm creating the content for, and some of the things that they're struggling with. And so if I was feeling really muddied up and my windshield of life was kind of unclear, taking some time to create something, write something down, draw something, all of this always inspired more clarity in my life, and in turn more joy. I saw this a lot with my LinkedIn posting too. It just made things so much better, being able to see a little bit more clearly, because now I've created something from all of the thoughts and all of the mess in my mind. I've created this valuable thing, at least to me, and that is useful, and it shows that, hey, I can move forward and I can learn even if I'm struggling. And maybe especially that I'm struggling, I can create something that provides clarity for me and others, and that is super valuable. Number 12, that you are not your thoughts. I cannot tell you how many negative thoughts I had this year, and how many that I completely gave into. Ones like, oh yeah, Dallin, you're not going to actually do that thing that you think you're going to do. You're not actually going to be successful. Sure, you have said this and that, but that's all baloney, and everyone knows you're a joke anyway. Like, holy cow, all these super powerful thoughts, like, that completely depress any of the joy I was feeling, or any of the lift I was getting if I was a hot air balloon. All of that is just so scary. You have to be very careful of what thoughts you let in. And so it's really important to consider that you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are not even the actions that you take. A lot of what you take is a lot of who you are is your intentions and your heart and what you are planning to do when you have that heart and those intentions. I mean, we all make actions that we are not particularly proud of, and so we learn from them, but we're not even those. I mean, we can always change. But thoughts are so pervasive and they take up so much peace and space. It's like, yikes, man. Like, can we just get some of these out of here? I just want them out so bad. And I've prayed to have different negative thoughts taken away, and sometimes it doesn't really happen. And so you have to take action to, like, kind of take those thoughts out of the picture, because when you are taking action, then you can't really have those thoughts stick around for super long. Like when you go on a run, or for me today I did a cold plunge. I mean, all my thoughts were really uplifting and useful. I was just amazed. I was like, wow, it's been so long since I did one of these cold plunges. I need to do this more often. And so it was exciting, it was useful. And again, when you have those exciting thoughts, then it leads to other exciting things. But, taking the best thoughts that you get is one of the best things you can do, because you're not only going to have great thoughts, you're going to have a lot of garbage and a lot of things that aren't really that useful. And so, you know, really calling those out and drawing attention to those is important, but you also need to take massive action and just being aware that at the end of the day, you're not your thoughts. Going along with that is something I read recently in a book that my dad gifted me for Christmas, and it just talked about how thoughts lead to circumstances. And this is so mind blowing to me because this is something I've literally experienced this year. All of these thinking about these things, I'm too behind, I'm too this, I'm too that, literally led to me feeling so much more like I was actually experiencing that. And it's helped me see, like, I actually wasn't in that spot that I felt like I was in. And now I kind of feel like I'm more in that spot. But even still, I mean things are still fine. It's just crazy. You just have to be very clear and very careful about where are these thoughts going to lead to. And you just, I don't know, they're going to lead to other stuff. And so there's this thought from this talk I remember from Dallin H. Oaks, who I am named after, who's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's one of the first presidency. He gave a really good talk called "Where Will This Lead?" and I think I can share a link to that if you'd like to give that a read. And just really helps me of considering where are my thoughts going to lead, and where are this action going to lead, and where is this thought going to lead in terms of my circumstance. If I took this thought I'm having right now and followed it, and it was an action, it was a habit, where does that eventually lead to? And considering that, I think, is extremely powerful, because I have seen a lot this year and in my life that what you think about is going to lead to eventually where you are. And so it's important to mesh with good minds, good people that really help you to have those good thoughts and just to take that wise action, because it does eventually where you end up in some way or another. Number 14 comes from Reg Allen. He's a really awesome guy. He used to teach at BYU Idaho. Now he's over at Melaleuca. I had a good talk with him a couple weeks ago, and something he told me, I was having a little bit of a rough time. He told me that it only takes one good day to change momentum. And this was completely against what I have been thinking and telling myself, is like that was going to take like a month. It's going to take a couple weeks of just being super consistent, super on the ball, and pretty much perfect, which is impossible. Like I'm never going to be perfect in this life, So like that's, yeah, not good. But anyway, he said you just need one good day now, and that's all you need. And so I've been trying to subscribe to that philosophy, and and believe that and move forward. But it's definitely a very powerful thought to think about. Like if you think of how many days there are in a life, and just thinking of how it just takes one really good day to change momentum. It doesn't even have to be perfect. Like that's not what Reg is saying. It just has to be good. It just has to point you in the right direction. It has to have some of those actions that were packed with good stuff that are going to move you forward. That's all it really needs. And it makes a lot of sense, I guess, when you think of like meal planning and you have a really good breakfast, you have really good cereal, all of that really helps you to get into a slightly better spot. It doesn't change everything, of course, but it does give you some momentum that you can potentially run with, and that's powerful. So I really appreciate Reg sharing that with me. Number 15, if you do not review your past lessons learned in life regularly, kind of like the cookie jar thing from if you do not review like some of the past lessons that you learned from your life and the wins that you've had regularly, then it's going to be easier to forget some of the wins that you've had. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but I had it happen this year where I was so focused on my current wins and what's ahead that I'd forget that I've had a lot of big wins and a lot of personal successes and private wins and public wins, all of that. It helps you to forget all of that if you are not consistently reviewing these things. And it goes back to like the spaced repetition of learning, which is how our brains learn. You spend a lot of time going back to different experiences and different things. Like with learning, you go back to like, oh, that's how you say this, that's what this means. And you go back to it on a consistent basis and you just reinforce it continuously. And that really helps you to keep moving forward in that direction and to learn whatever the thing is you're trying to learn. If you think of each day as like a test, it really helps you to see why this would be useful. Taking all the notes from all of your previous days of life does help you a lot with living this current day. And I think I really just struggled with giving myself that opportunity. Like I have all these, deep dives on learning that I've done. I've done all these podcast episodes. I've done so many journal entries, but I didn't review them a lot this year. I still reviewed them a decent amount, but especially when I needed it most, I think I didn't review those things, and it really helped. It really prevented me from rising as high as I wanted to, and as I felt I deserved, and as I feel I could have. So it really helps to take a review and do those things. And a quick little bonus tip: you can fool everyone, but if you are staying true to yourself and being honest with yourself, you cannot fool yourself. And even though I've had struggles this year and I felt like I wasn't really making much of a difference, that a lot of things that I was doing were, kind of not useful, I am still trying to be honest with myself. Okay, therefore what? What am I going to do? I haven't hid from these emotions. I've tried not to. I've tried to move forward despite them. I've tried to create in the midst of these storms and these problems and these struggles. And that's ultimately helped me to get to where I am now. I haven't quit. I didn't let all these thoughts and all these things overwhelm me. I'm going to let them help me become better. And no matter how painful that might be, is I'm not going to let this hold me back, as I'm going to move forward. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep building. I'm going to keep learning. And I'm going to keep being honest with myself where I wanted to be, where I'm at, what I did, what I didn't do. I really don't want to hide any of that and just be very clear with myself. This is what I have struggled with. This is what I've done well. And if you can do that, that helps a lot. And, there's a lot of people this year that would tell me, oh, Dallin, you're doing so good. Dallin, you're doing so well. And, deep down, I was like, well, you haven't really talked with me on some of my darker days, and you also don't know some of my current goals, and so it's kind of hard for you to say that. I mean, I do appreciate the compliment, but I feel the complete opposite. I've never felt like I'm falling behind so much, or and just talking about those things is really important. But I was pretty good at fooling people. People thought I was doing pretty well, and those were some of the days that I was definitely struggling a lot. And I have had a lot of friends that care about me and everything like that and want to help me. And, shout out to AJ. One day he just kind of helped me out when I told him I was really struggling and got me some soup later. All those things really help out a lot. But at the end of the day, I cannot fool myself. And I personally am way too honest to fool myself. I just can't. I've had so many good wins. I've had so many great days. And I'm too optimistic to think that this is it, you know. And so I really do hold myself to a high standard. And I think I could have been a lot better with self-care, which is a lot of what this podcast is about. So that's kind of a decent part of my struggles is like, oh, I run this podcast and I feel like I'm not helping myself, let alone anybody else. But just sharing how I'm struggling and stuff, I'm sure is helping out somebody. But thinking that you can fool everybody and still be okay with yourself, I mean, not like I was planning to do that or anything, but I have definitely struggled a lot more than people think this year. And I'm thankful for everyone that did reach out to me and did help me understand. A lot of it just was a time of transition, trying to reach out to so many people. And there's a lot of people that I just don't need to reach out to anymore. And just coming to terms with that, coming to terms with graduation soon, it was just all a bit much for me. And it was definitely difficult to feel and to go through. And I had a lot of people that were helpful and a lot of people that really helped me out, like Elijah buying me soda, or salad, that really helped me. I mean, all of that was extremely helpful. But yeah, at the end of the day, being honest with yourself is the best thing that you can do when you have those really rough times. Because you know yourself really well, and so you're the one that needs to help yourself out a lot. Trying to get validation from others for reasons to keep moving forward and stuff. That's not good because all of the vision is really deep inside yourself. You're ultimately the captain of your own ship. And I made a LinkedIn post recently about that. I can have a link to that in the show notes too. So this wasn't even the annual review. This is just some lessons I got out of the year. It was definitely a plentiful year. I did a lot of amazing stuff working at Pizza Hut, doing the internship with Stu Kent, lots of podcast interviews, over 100 podcast episodes this year, which is mind-blowing. But ultimately, I do feel very unsatisfied. And it's like, okay, I need to be very clear of what would satisfy me, what would help me, And yeah, so we're just going to keep moving forward, keep trying. I hope one of these lessons resonate with you, and if not, it's completely chill too. And I'll just keep moving forward and keep trying and just be okay. So I wish you all the best with this upcoming year 2022 and definitely a lot more lessons to learn. And I'm going to try to learn these, try to apply these to my life. And I would encourage you to take one of the lessons that you thought was useful and apply it to your life. And I think it would help a lot. So as always, thank you so much for listening and for your support of the podcast and of me. I really do appreciate it. And thank you. Don't forget to heal today, and it'll be better tomorrow.